Here are my 4 best tips for an IBS, Crohn's, or colitis flare. My name's Mike DeHill, your gut guy. I used to have horrible Crohn's symptoms and went through plenty of flares, and my doctors really didn't know what was causing them, and I tried all the different drugs, and nothing was really helping until I started addressing the root cause. And what I do has worked for many other people, and my information stems from a doctor who actually knew what they were doing, who seek the root cause. So his name was Dr. Hammer, and he discovered that it always starts after a traumatic event. And when I looked at doctors of old and read old doctors, gastroenterologist book, they said, yeah, every time somebody shows up in the ER with a flare, it's always after a stressful event. And most of the time, the person won't admit to it. I got to talk to their family and dig it out of their family, like, yeah, he just lost his job, something to that effect. And even when I was going through flares, I would have never fessed up that, oh, I'm not stressed out, don't, but I was always super angry and frustrated and annoyed with something, like to the max when I went through my worst flares. It was either through a breakup or, passing final exams at school or a very stressful project at work. These were when I had my worst flares. So essentially, during the conflict active phase, the body is developing extra gut cells, and the first time this happens, we won't have symptoms. And this is a very brief explanation. If you want a more in-depth explanation and exactly what I did to get better, I have a 13-day protocol. You can get this on my website, but if you haven't already, you need to watch my free webinar. It is a mini version of my 13-day protocol. This is exactly what I would do step by step if I had to do this all over again. So when that conflict gets resolved, that's when the body starts to get rid of extra gut cells, and it becomes like very painful. It's you're removing physical flesh from your body. The more stressed out you were about the conflict, the more cells that need to be removed, the more blood and mucus and pain there's going to be. Now, while this is happening, all we can do is let it happen and manage the symptoms and try to stay relaxed and calm. And now all the drugs that are out there, they're all stimulants. Think they're all either steroids or they're highly stimulating drugs. And essentially what's happening here is, this is fight or flight. This is when our nervous system is in fight or flight. And then when the conflict gets resolved, it goes into rest and digest and it starts to remove all these extra cells. Now, it depends, sometimes I see this as like a week, 2 weeks. It just depends on how intense the conflict was for somebody. But when when all the extra gut cells are finally done being removed, uh, and this healing is also happening on the brain because the brain has been in overdrive processing the extra functions of the organ and of the stress in your life. So the brain needs to be repaired too. And when that happens, that's when we get the fever and the headaches because the brain is being repaired as well. And then after that, it's smooth sailing. And what causes somebody to get Crohn's, colitis, and IBS is if the conflict is constantly on and off, on and off, on and off. The stress at work is always on and off, on and off. The stress in the relationship is always on and off, on and off, on and off. It keeps putting the gut in and out of overdrive. While we're in a flare, it's really important not to blame food because being in a flare can be a very traumatic event for somebody, especially if the one expert they're supposed to turn to, their GI doctor, literally has no idea what's going on and he's telling you all these scary things. Now, like, oh, somebody said gluten's dangerous, even though I've had it my whole entire life and I'm fine. Now gluten just becomes like this highly charged PTSD trigger. Your brain is in a very vulnerable state. And so, like, essentially what our job is to rest and relax and to get through this process, as comfortably and as safely as possible. Now, my symptoms were never bad enough where I had to go to the ER to get things taken care of, but I know there's a lot of people that lose a lot of blood and their weight, or they have blockages or something like that. Yes, we do require medical attention for those types of things, but to prevent future flare-ups and to have this go as smoothly as possible, we need to keep that conflict under control. We need to stay calm and understand what our body is doing. And as far as diets go, again, I'm not recommending any crazy diets. The one thing, the body is burning through a lot of sugar and a lot of protein. So, and you're really not doing a great job at digesting food right now. The digestive system is a mess. So it's really good to have things like Jell-O because it has protein and sugar in it. Yeah, I know sugar, you could do sugar from fruits. That has a little bit more nutrition in it. You can do meat stocks and, try to make things as easy to digest as possible. I can make a whole video on that. But the foods just feel light when you eat them. But some sort of a sugary drink, like a fruit juice or something like that, aim for the healthier side. Those are calories that get absorbed in the stomach. Because anything that goes to the small intestine right now is giving more work to the small intestine can't handle it right now. He's like, hey, I'm busy like rearranging your cells, like I can't digest anything. So eating foods or drinking drinks that get absorbed in the stomach can really help with the weight loss and just give your body the nutrients and at least the energy it needs to complete these functions while it can't digest food. So this was highly simplified. I go over this in much more detail in my free instant webinar, and I kind of give you the mini version of my 13-day protocol. If I had to do it all over again, I spent years with GI doctors who all they told me to do, nope, there's nothing we can do. Just, you got to be on drugs for the rest of your life. I refuse to consider that there's a cause. It's super lazy that there's not a cause. Like, you believe in ghosts too? Like, what? It's when you become open to this perspective, you'll see that it's caused by stress or the conflict resolution every single time. And I give you tons of case studies and a lot more science to back this up in my free instant webinar.